Welcome back to another episode of the Blacklist Podcast. Today, we are thrilled to have Daniel Ritchie, a former 5-time MMA champion who has turned his fighting spirit towards a different kind of battle. Not only has Daniel conquered the ring, but he's also a published writer, co-author, and motivational speaker dedicated to helping others break free from the chains of addiction. Utilizing his social media platforms as powerful tools for change, Daniel shares his journey and insights to inspire and support those seeking a life free from addiction. Join us as we dive into Daniel's story of resilience and redemption and learn how he's using his experiences to empower others on their path to recovery. This episode, along with a host of other inspiring stories, can be found at theblacklistpodcast.com. Without further delay, Daniel Ritchie. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to the show Daniel Ritchie.
Hey, thank you, Jared.
Thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm great. I'm glad that we were able to get this scheduled. I know it was a last minute deal, but we made it happen. So
I like last minute though.
Yeah. Sometimes sometimes last minutes ends up being some of the best things.
For sure.
Yeah, it's man, it's crazy. It's just been I told you before we hit record, I kind of found you going down a wormhole. So through other guests that have been on here, so definitely love what you stand for and what you're doing. And I was like, I got to get you on, share your story and just talk about recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my favorite thing to talk about, to be honest.
I
mean, it becomes a lifestyle. So
exactly, right? It's more than just getting sober. Like that's the way that I look at it. Is recovery is more, it's your whole lifestyle. It's everything that you do. And so, people
Absolutely.
think that once you just get sober, that that's it. There's a whole nother world when it comes to sobriety.
Mm-hmm. Right.
People think we can't have fun or we can't do this or we can't do that just because we're sober. And it's like some of the best times of my life have been in sobriety. So,
right. Yeah, that's what a lot of our addictions want us to think, right? It wants us to think that we can't, have fun without it or anything. I think that's part of the disease. That's like, kind of like like another ugly head that pokes itself out, right? Like
right.
That little voice in the back of our head that tells us we can't do things, like somehow life won't work without drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. Like it won't compute, So.
Yeah. It's like breaking that stigma too, on society, that's the way society looks at it. And they're like, oh, you have to be drunk or high to have fun.
Right.
And when we do these podcasts and not even podcasts, when it's just, speaking at an event, when it's just doing something and it's in recovery, like it goes to show people out there, like, listen, like we can have a really good life and really good time in sobriety and not have to be hungover the next day, or dope sick or none of that, So I'm just like, I take it, people think, man, it's boring to be sober. I'm like, bro, you listen to our podcast and see all the people we talk to and all the stories and everything that people are doing with their lives when it comes to recovery. I'm like, that'll change your whole mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's why it's important we share our stories too,
right.
And our survival guides, how we got here in the first place, especially, some of us that have survived through what we have or been able to, once be too far gone to, a message of hope. So,
yeah, it's like there's no like one size fits all for recovery. That's the other thing too. It's 2024. There's more than one way to recover. And so it's like changing the stigma around shaming others for recovering differently. Some people, they can do AA and be 100% abstinent. Some people can't. They got to do the MAT route or the cannabis route and just different things. But at the end of the day, like as long as we're all trying to get sober, and then sharing these stories and learning what worked for you, okay, and what worked for you might not work for me, and vice versa. And it's just showing people that, like, listen, there's more than one way to recover. And we're trying to change that mentality and like the verbiage and just different things on when it comes down to that, because people, unfortunately, in recovery are so one track minded when it comes to sobriety. And it's like, if you're not abstinent, you're not sober. And I'm not knocking anybody's view on that whatsoever, because you have every right to think that way, just like I have every right to think my way.
Right.
But I want to change that. I want to show people like there is more than one way. So that's why we do this, to help share other people's story. Like, this is what worked for them, and this might work for you, and it might not work for you, but at least you know, and you're gaining education and knowledge and tools and everything about it.
Yeah, I think another flip side of that is the people that are recovering differently than what maybe traditionally was, encouraged. Now we're giving them hope that they don't have to feel that guilt or like some type of shame. And like, that's one of the things like that bothers me the most, like, is somebody who maybe, they're either on MAT or maybe they are doing like a marijuana maintenance, like whatever, but they used to stick a needle in their neck. Like, you're going to tell me that they're not recovered? Like, this guy has his life today. This guy got it. Like, you know what I mean? And it's just, and it's making those people feel proud of the way they've recovered as well. So,
yeah. And we're just here to give people hope, just to let them know, listen, you ain't alone. There's other people that think the same exact way that you think or feel. And so we're out here. So, man, you got I mean, I haven't even really heard much about your story, but just from a little bit of brief from the bio you sent over and whatnot, you got a hell of a story, and I'm excited to hear it, man. So we'll kind of hop in on it. And like, what was childhood like for you? Like, where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I was actually born in Rochester, New York. My dad's family is from New York. My mom's was from Cincinnati, Ohio, and when I was a very young, maybe 1-2 years old, my mom and my dad moved back here to Cincinnati to be with my mom's family. Both sides of the family were very large. I believe it was probably the same back then, but my mom's side of the family was just a little bit tighter, a little less drama maybe, but still a lot of drama. But anyway, it was so I came back here young. I mean, all summer we were at the pool, played baseball. I lived in a lower middle class neighborhood, but we didn't really know the difference at that age. And I got into sports. My first like athletic dream was to be an Olympic swimmer. I was setting swim records at like 5 years old. I was a very talented athlete even at a young age, but there was definitely some mental health concerns that started to rear their ugly head out even back then. And things, and as we know, like, I mean, mental health is being treated differently, but I was medicated at a young age. I was almost like put immediately in like, it was like you feel shame and like all these things, don't understand why you're not learning the same. So other than that though, my childhood was pretty good. I, can't really complain. Didn't go on a lot of vacations and things like that, but spent a lot of time in the streets and running around the neighborhood, it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I live in New York now. I'm just south of Rochester.
Oh, okay.
But I'm from Arizona, from Phoenix, but I moved out here about a year ago. So I don't go I go to Rochester for work, but Rochester's a pretty rough place. I mean, again, I don't know if you've been back ever, since you moved away, but I don't, it is pretty rough. So I don't know how Cincinnati is. I haven't really ever been there.
Cincinnati is we were like, us and Dayton were like number 1 and 2 overdose capital in the world in the United States for a long time. Yeah.
I heard a lot of bad stuff about Dayton, and I'm just
and Cincinnati was right there with it.
So at what age did you try like your first substance, or like liquor or weed or whatever?
So I think, I might have like dabbled in like some little airplane bottles. I remember I don't remember exactly what age I was, but the time that sticks out the most when things started to change for me was, when they do change for a lot of younger children. I at about 12, 13 years old, I just started, I was very physical. And but I'd like to point this out. Like, I was a very physical, like if we were arguing, we were fighting, like physically fighting. But the thing was, like, I wasn't a bully either. Like, I didn't pick on kids that were smaller than me, but if I got in an argument with somebody, that's how it went. I just was I always felt like I had to be defensive. And at about 13 years old, I I remember going to middle school for the first time. I was in 7th grade, and driving past the corner outside of the school and seeing people out there smoking cigarettes and, just, doing shit like shady stuff and just like girls and all this stuff. And I remember immediately, like, I was like, wow, that is cool. Like, not the jocks and the football players, like, not a lot of them I didn't think were as cool as those guys on the corner. So that's kind of when it started. I kind of gravitated towards then. I remember the first night I got drunk with those guys. It was within the first couple weeks of school, and me and this guy chugged 40-ounce bottles, chugged these 40s, and allegedly broke into like 150 cars. Like, just went on a spree at like 13, 14 years old. So immediately, my drinking was immediately associated with criminal activity. So
like, that was it like a peer pressure thing to start drinking that, or was you just did it?
I don't, it was the desire to fit in.
Yeah.
I was a really skinny kid. I had acne pretty like, it was when it was on set, it was on set. Like, it was as soon as I started puberty. And so I immediately was getting picked on. I had self-esteem issues, and the kids that seemed to pick on me the most were the kids that I was playing alongside of in sports. So it was like I didn't feel any type of I didn't really feel connection to anybody. It was weird even for me back then, but it was I think I felt it was the pressure from the kids that I was supposed to be with. It was the pressure of them pushing me away, making me feel unwanted. And in the welcoming of that other friend group, like, it wasn't that they pressured me; it was that they welcomed me in.
Right. Yeah. How did it progress from after that first time that you got drunk and went on that spree? Did it become like a constant thing after that?
It did. I started hanging out with those kids, and it's crazy. I was still playing football and swimming competitively. I remember having one of the kids that we were selling drugs. I started selling drugs. I remember one of the kids I sold drugs with took me to a swim meet. I got first place in like 3 different things, and then left, and we like got in the car and started smoking blunts and driving away. Like, and I started getting into selling drugs. So I saw the hustle. I wanted the hustle. I wanted the power. I wanted it was like I had to always constantly be trying to elevate myself, which is one of my character defects. But it was, so at 14 years old, I was selling pretty heavy. At 14, I used to date this girl that lived in the projects, and or in the more lower part of the neighborhood. And every time I would go there, because I was white, they would try to chase me out. And one day, one of the guys came up to me. He's like, "Bro, if you want to, you're gonna have to fight. You're gonna have to stand up for yourself." So I ended up fighting a grown man at 13 years old and basically cracking his forehead open. Yeah. And after that, those guys, not only did they, treat me differently, but they put me on.
Yeah.
And
how did you feel when you did that?
I felt empowered. I felt like I had just like showing myself, like it was like I had elevated almost. Mm-hmm. At 14 years old though, and I usually don't get a chance to dive into this too much. I did one time at a trauma conference that I spoke at, but at 14 years old, I got my first felony charge. Yeah. So there was a literal sting operation on me. I sold to a confidential informant who was an adult at that, and he kept trying to, lure me in, and finally one day he did, and they picked me up in a van, and I recognized the driver of this van. It was a detective that I had already tried to mess with me before. So I called him out. And I remember like, let me out of this van. And they pulled into this UDF, which is a gas station here. I don't know if they're anywhere else. So, and I tried to jump out of the van, and the cop cars came swarming in. It was like something you'd see in a movie. I tried to run. They grabbed my little ass and just slammed me on the car. And, it was pretty brutal. I got charged with 4 counts of drug trafficking.
Really? How did your parents deal with all that?
I think that they were shocked, and I don't think they really knew what to do, and that was part of the problem with a lot of that for me, was that my parents didn't know what to do. And
Did
I
they
don't
know like you
fault
were
them for that.
involved in like anything, like drinking or nothing?
They knew, they just really didn't. I don't think they knew what to do. Like, they would threaten to do something, but I just did it anyway. Like,
Right.
I became very unruly very fast. And part of that was because I've had, as an adult, I've gone to therapy. I've had a lot of relationship issues, I believe, because of some of my relationships as a child, and especially with my mother. She decided that her approach, and God rest her soul, but her approach was going to be tough love. I'm going to tough love this kid. And that's not what I needed. I needed to be like maybe disciplined, or maybe, but I needed to feel safe. And that was something that I didn't get, unfortunately. My dad was always at work. So, you know, I've thought about that a lot, but I think that's so my parents more of didn't know what to do. So it continued.
Right. So, like,
Um,
what was going through your mind when you got hit with those felonies? Like, did you feel like a badass? Like you were, like cool, or were you scared, or like
I
how?
was
What did you feel?
terrified.
Yeah.
I was terrified, but I mean, it was my first real, like, I had gotten in trouble for curfew, and I knew the cops were kind of like, just trying to crack down on the drugs in the neighborhood, and I was a part of that scene, and they knew it. Neighborhoods and in the city, it doesn't matter. You got your district cops; they know who's doing what. And
Mm.
but I was scared enough that I did I think it was about 2 months in juvie, and because it was my first set of charges, two of the drug trafficking charges were dropped, and they held the other two, put me on probation, and I remember being like, I am done. I am done. I know that scared me. That's not what I want. I want to go back to school. I want to go to school. I want to play football. I just want to be. I didn't like that. Like, it was very scary. And one day before, and the guy who snitched on me, I told you he was an adult, and he actually lived by the school. Well, every kid and everybody in the neighborhood knew that he was a confidential informant. They knew it was him. The police did not do a very good job of protecting this man,
Mm.
and they tormented him. They did. I mean, he shouldn't have done what he did, but they tormented him,
Wow.
and he ended up coming after me for it.
Really?
Yeah,
Like try to like a hit on you or what?
tried to stab me at 15 years old. Or when I was 15, he would always drive by the school, and one day somebody yelled something. I never did. Like, I would admit it at this point, but I never did, because I knew that was like the wrong move. Like, that
Mm.
I needed to leave this man alone, but I couldn't keep other people from doing what they were doing.
Right.
And he stopped his car, and he jumped out and pulled out a box cutter and came right at me. And
Wow.
I had already been boxing at that age. I was kind of a hothead anyway, even though I was trying to better myself.
Right.
And man, I just snapped, and I jumped out in the street, and we were like squared up, and he swung the box cutter at me, and then I came at him, and he ran, and he jumped in his car and drove off. And
Wow.
I went into the school. I called my mother. She told me no. I was like, we need to go to the police station now, and she was like, no, after school. And I just had this feeling like, this is bad. This is really bad. And plus, this
Yeah.
grown adult just tried to stab me on top of all that, like,
Mm.
and or cut me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the last bell of school, I got called into it was a gym class. They called me into the office of the gym class, and guess it was two detectives. One of the same detectives that was actually driving that van that day. And they go, hey, Daniel, what happened? And I'm like, I'm so glad you guys are here. And I told them everything, the truth, God honest truth, everything. And they go, well, Daniel, you know what? We don't believe you. We're arresting you today on a felony 2, intimidation of a witness. And cuffed
Ooh.
me and waited till the school lit out and took me out in front of the entire school. Like, shamed
Wow.
me.
They
And
did they did that on purpose.
yeah,
That's fucked up.
yeah. And the scariest part of it was that I felt so helpless. Like being falsely accused of a crime um is a very helpless feeling because and especially being a child and not being like trying to be truthful and trying to be the best that you been taught up to that point, and then being told you're a liar by everybody. Like my parents didn't believe, my mom didn't believe me, my dad didn't believe me, no adults believed me. And they ended up they were so convinced that I was going to be committed of this charge that they put me into a group home pretty quickly. And I was abused for 3 months in this group home. I was beat, I was starved, I was psychologically tortured, I was bullied, all because I wouldn't admit my guilt. Part of the programming for this program that they had put me in this group home was admitting your guilt and like all this stuff, like coming to terms with, which may be good for somebody who did something, but not for somebody who I hadn't even been proven guilty of this yet. And I stood my ground. I could have ran, but I didn't because I knew that if I ran, it was going to take the only opportunity I had away from me to prove that I was innocent. And it was a really hard time, man. And I kept trying to tell everybody what was happening, and it was like nobody would believe me. My friends, maybe, and people had witnessed this on top of that. They witnessed what happened that day. It took 4 months to get in front of a judge, and never talk to a public defender. I just literally thought like, well, I have no chance. Like nobody believes me. And my friends, they showed up to court. But one of the key things I did was I put, as we say, pen to paper. I wrote from the morning, from what happened that morning in detail, up to the event, up to the moment I was arrested on paper. And I handed it to my lawyer, who handed it to the judge, or my public defender, who handed it to the judge. The judge read it, and he was like, something is off here. This doesn't make any sense. And he started asking all the right questions. This judge was on it. And he goes, this doesn't make any sense. This isn't even the appropriate charge for what you guys are trying to put on this kid. Dismissed.
Wow.
And
how long after that happened? How long after that happened did they dismiss it?
It was about 3.5 months.
Okay.
Yeah, about 3.5 months after the event for my arrest.
Yeah, I'm sure you got like a feeling of like a little bit of relief off your shoulders, that you didn't have to, go through with that charge. But how was it like how was life after that? Like, did you shape up, or did you just kept doing the same shit?
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, I got worse. It was crazy. I was so grateful. Like, oh my gosh, I was so grateful. Like, I couldn't. I was gonna get to go outside. I was gonna get to smoke my cigarette. I was gonna,
you got to cut a break.
Right, but really quickly, that gratitude turned into resentment, and we know what unresolved resentments do. But that resentment, what it did was, we talk about planting seeds in recovery. But there was a seed planted in me at that age that it didn't matter what I did with my life, that I was destined to go to jail, that I was destined for failure. I was destined for an early death. That was somehow I was convinced of that because I was like, it doesn't matter. Nobody's ever going to believe me. No one's ever going to have my back. It's me and only me. You know what I mean? And it was just like, so I went balls to the wall. I was getting high. I was smoking weed. I was snorting pills. I was selling everything I could, hustling. I was carrying a gun. I was doing a lot of other things and making a lot of money. And by 16 years old, I caught 2 more felony charges. So I sold a lot of LSD as a kid because the neighborhood I grew up in was predominantly white, and I took advantage of that. And so that sounds so bad, Sally. Yeah, but it was like, well, yeah, white kids loved acid. So so anyway, I got busted. So I got busted with LSD, and back then it was a pretty serious charge, and they ended up, because of my record of behavior, I ended up a ward of the state at 16.
Really?
We
So how
went
did
to
your
DYS.
your parents feel about that?
Man, my dad was a very kind man for the most part when it came to that. I don't really remember him guilting me too much or anything like that. But my mother, on the other hand, like, dude, it was just, I don't know. It's a really hard thing to I don't really know, actually. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question. I don't really know how they took it. They took it well. At least they appeared that so.
Hmm.
Uh, I think they also felt powerless.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
it's a good, it's, I like asking that question too, because, like, there might be parents that are listening to this that are dealing with kind of something similar with their child. And, and they're trying to figure out like if their feelings are the right feelings and how, and different things like that. And then and then at the end of the day too, it's almost like it's, where you can sit there and say, if your parents did feel a certain way and maybe if they would have sat down and had a conversation, like would have that changed your train of thought down the line and this, that, and the third. So, I mean, it's a very good question to ask when it comes to
it
it.
is, it is, and I don't think it was easy on them.
Right.
My dad suffered a lot more because of my behavior than I realized at that time.
Hmm.
I thought he didn't care. I bumped heads with my dad. My dad
Yeah.
was what helped raise. He was the second oldest. He raised all of his brothers and sisters. He was a provider. That's what his role was.
Hmm.
As a father, he was a provider. Like, he was very
Yeah.
stern. He worked hard,
Hmm.
and I'm really grateful. But at the time, I didn't see it that way. Uh,
At at what point did you realize when it came to like the addiction side and all that? Like, at what point did you realize like that you knew you had an issue, or was it? I mean, was it when you were in your teens doing all that shit, or was it when you got older? Or
Man, I always struggled to do everything. Any drug or any alcohol, I always overdid it. So I guess at a young age, you could say, and in between a lot of that, I had been in little programs and whatever was available maybe at the time, or I got busted for curfew or busted for weed, but at that point, it was evident that there was an issue. But I was in DYS till I was 18. 1 week. Well, they released me 1 week after my 18th birthday. They didn't release me on my 18th birthday because I got jumped by a bunch of kids, other from a different part of the state, because it was like city versus city. They heard I was getting out, man, and they beat me pretty
really?
good. They jumped me, yeah, in the laundry room, so they wouldn't let me out like that. Um, my
So how did you
addiction.
feel when you got out?
Oh my god, man! I was at a place called Cuyahoga Hills Boys School. Let me tell you, that was a prison. I was in boot camp for like a year, like
Mm,
a solid boot camp, and I mean, it was a dormitory, so it was bunk beds, so free reign, man, and it was corrupt. I mean, I was with kids that were murderers. These kids aren't getting out till they're 21. Some aren't getting out till they're 25. Like, uh, it was very harsh. It was something that when I got out of there, I didn't never wanted to go back. Um, and it's funny. Well, my counselor, even back then, was like, "You're destined, Daniel, for adult prison. Everybody here goes. You're no different than anybody else in here." And I it was just like, that was my counselor. Like, that's just how the system was. Because that's what they saw. And the lack of rehabilitation. Like, what is rehabilitation outside of drugs and alcohol, right? So,
right.
um, but although there's some time in between, my addiction really didn't take off until I was, in my later 20s. So
Okay.
all the signs were there.
Right.
Um, but I was always able to find something else to grasp a hold of. Like, I grasped a hold of it. That's kind of how I got involved in MMA. It
Mm,
was, I'd love to box. I'd love to fight. And back in, 2000, or it was almost bordering being illegal. and I liked that. It was the thrill of that was appealing to me, and just the rawness of it. And my first fight was at 18 years old. I fought in a tournament at the Hero Arena in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
That was when I fell in love with that sport. But I always loved to party. And I don't think that's like means that you're going to be an addict, but
right.
There was a part of me, and I think this is a part of a lot of people that deal with addiction, that we're like extremists. It's just like everything we do is extreme. Everything we do is bad. When we hate somebody, we hate them. When we love them, we love them. Like, it's just like very intense emotions, right?
Go big or go home.
Right. So that was as I became as I continued to pursue a career as a fighter, I pursued a career as a personal trainer. I also was a bouncer at a bar. Like, that kind of came along with all the guys I trained with were bouncers. It was extra money. I got to still go out and do things. And it was actually that nightlife aspect of it that introduced me to a lot of the more of the hardcore drugs.
Okay.
Whenever I would start doing coke, it wouldn't stop. Like, we would go to Las Vegas and I would get lost in the casino. I'd be gone, like, just in my own world, man, getting in trouble. Like, I don't know how I never disappeared out there. Like, but I would say one of the most defining moments of a lot of that, if that's kind of what, to fast forward, was one of the things I wanted was to be a champion. Like, I always wanted to be, like, if I'm not going to go all the way, like, if I'm not going to be the best, then what's the point? Like, I got to at least try to be I want to be the best. Like, F trying. I want to be the guy they write about in books. I want to, like, that was like my mindset even back then. And I finally was going to get a shot at being a champion, actually a top contender spot. So back then in the early 2000s, like, the sport was, Ultimate Fighter, the first season had just aired, and the sport's getting more popular, and it's still not very regulated, but they're kind of starting to watch a little more, and it's more accepted. But the internet wasn't really, like, there was YouTube, but not really, I had they set me up with a fight. It was a top contender spot. The guy was already a champion at a King of the Cage show in Indiana. There wasn't very many shows, so it was really easy to know where someone was. But I had never heard of the guy or knew much about him, and I remember showing up to the weigh-ins that night and looking around to see who my opponent was, and seeing this guy standing in the corner, just like, it was like there was a shadow over this man. Neck was, he was intimidating, and I remember being like, "Who's fighting that dude?" And they were like, "You are." And I was like, "Okay." And needless to say, we walked out, bell rang. He was definitely known for knocking people out, and he almost knocked me out. And I shot in on him to do a double to kind of gain my composure. And when I picked him up, I attempted to slam him as hard as I could. And somehow, I still don't really know, but I landed wrong. And I wasn't sure whether I had broken my neck or what had happened. Or I was having a heart attack, but something was wrong, like, on this side of my body. I rode out the first round, on top of him, came out the second round. I kind of had a little bit more of my rhythm, and I went to throw a jab, and my arm completely came out of socket. And, but the fight's going, like, my adrenaline's going. I'm quitting isn't even crossing my mind. It's just like, well, how do I win this fight now? And so I threw a leg kick, and he didn't block it. I threw another one. I saw his facial expression change. I threw another one, and he started to back up. I fainted. I threw one more as hard as I could, and he buckled and turned around and covered. And I won via TKO with leg kicks.
With your arm out of it dislocated.
Yep, completely.
Holy shit.
It was broken. I broke my shoulder, actually.
And so did the trainers and all them, did they know, like, your arm had been out like that? Like, did they notice that?
Nobody really noticed. I mean, I was definitely, like, when it came out, like, I definitely was kind of hanging at that point. So but they just thought I wasn't putting my hands up.
Oh, okay, okay.
but like, not only is that one of my favorite like fight stories, but it was also my first experience with opioid pain medication.
Okay.
That's what opened the door.
That's I was going to ask how that progressed.
Yeah, and that was the moment I discovered what my solution was at that time. I struggle with a lot of anxiety. I struggle with a lot of depression. It runs in my family. Suicide unfortunately runs on my mother's side of the family, and I always tried to mask that, or like almost like I was too tough for it, but that doesn't really work. So it was like I was always trying to find an escape. Like I might do a couple shots, but I was always able to get through it pretty well. But when I took those pills, it was like my life had been out of sync. Like I was riding a wave, and for the first time in my life, it was still waters. I felt clear. I felt motivated. I felt like everything I said was right. I felt like every move I made was right. I felt like I could train harder. Like it was like the solution to everything. It was like exactly what I had been looking for, or what I thought I had been looking for. I didn't understand the dangers. I really didn't. I began to abuse the pain medication at that point, and the abuse went up and down. I became a champion after I had shoulder surgery. Kind of actually chilled out on the pain pills a little bit. I didn't, it didn't really. I still dabbled in them, but I became, I won a title and I defended it 4 times. I fought in Birmingham, Alabama. My fight career was sadly cut short to what it probably could have been, or what I'd hoped it'd be.
Was that due to your addiction?
Yeah.
Did they find out like you were using, or was it just
no? You know how it is, man. We hide it until we can, until all of a sudden it doesn't hide anymore.
It comes out, and
yeah. And I was just, one of the first things that I noticed that nobody else would have noticed was I was really slipping morally. Like I was doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have been. And a lot of those things were stuff that I should have been able to know that it was bad because I wasn't telling anybody about it, but to me, it was like I was living this second life. But the whole time I thought I had a second life because I had this whole like childhood that nobody knew about anymore, except for maybe a few of the people I grew up with. But most of the people at that point were all new to my life at 18, 19 years old. They didn't know. I didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about the trauma. I didn't talk about the abuse. I didn't talk about the felonies because I felt like they would judge me for it.
Right.
And I found a doctor. I was a pill mill, up here in Coleraine, and they supplied me with whatever I wanted, man. They would just tell me, they say, what do you need to compete? And they'd give it to me.
Right. So fast forward through all of this, what would you say was your rock bottom? Like what got to that point where you were just done? Yeah. Like,
that's always a crazy question for me. Cause I feel like I was at rock bottom for a good 4 years.
Everybody's rock bottom's different.
Yeah. So it's funny. It was like, there was a difference between almost like my rock bottom and the moment I changed, or the moment I decided to give it a shot. I guess was my last overdose. I had been stabbed. I had been overdosed countless times. I was then using a needle. Nobody recognized me. I didn't even recognize myself. And I left the treatment center and went to a hotel, and it was my 9th overdose. It was carfentanil. And there's a lot of things about to that, man. I was using alone. There was nobody else in this hotel room, and I woke up with the paramedics around me. How they got there, I'll never know. But if they hadn't, I would have died. And when I came to, they go, the first thing I remember him saying was like, "Bro, you were dead." And I was like, he's like, "Man, I don't know. You just took a breath." And I remember feeling like I had been dead, man. I felt just like I'd been thrown back in my body, upside down, backwards. When I went to try to move my arm, my leg moved, nothing. I thought I had really done some serious damage. And I came to, I remember police being there and then getting out of the hotel and going to another one and calling the treatment center that I had just left and being like, there was just something, like, I felt so broken. Something was different. It was like I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to live, but I wanted to live. I just didn't want to live the way I was. But I didn't see a way out. I thought people like me didn't recover. Like, we were too far gone, and I called the treatment center I just left, and the lady was like, as I'm pleading, and the words she said to me, it was just, it changed my life. And all it was a few simple words. And she just went, "Baby, it's going to be okay. We're going to take care of you. We got you. Okay. It's going to be okay." As I was like almost hysterical. And, I believed her. I believed her.
Yeah. So that was kind of like that was like when you decided to just give it a shot.
I'm going to give it another shot. Yes.
Another shot.
Yeah. Right.
And what did that look like?
So, as a lot of us do, man, we try all these ways because we try to find somewhere where we're different, right? Like, what, oh, well, I could still do this. I just won't do that. Or, and all those things. And none of those worked. And I went to detox. It was my second time at that detox in 2 months. And I remember being like, nobody's taking this from me. And but one of the key factors too was I had this dream that I had, but also my perception of what recovery was like. To get a sponsor, like all the things that they were telling me didn't make sense to me. They didn't click. They didn't feel like they were associated with me. But when I put it in the terms as I would as an athlete, like, oh, a sponsor, well, that's my coach. Like, how did I win fights? Because right now I'm locked in the cage across from an opponent that's beating the hell out of me and that I don't know how to fight. How do I learn? So I took it not as treatment, but as training.
Yeah. And did that look like scary to you? Like just because, you were doing this sober at that point now,
yeah.
Right? So you're trying to figure out how to navigate that.
Man, I came to this, I had this epiphany that maybe Daniel Ritchie doesn't know what's best for him anymore. Yeah. Maybe I did at one time, but I no longer do, and I don't know how to do this. And when I came to that, I also was like, okay, I'm going to start taking suggestion, but I'm going to let other people guide me because clearly I don't know how to do this, and I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I don't want to go back out there. I don't know what I'm capable of. I don't see my life going anywhere, but I have to find out. Like, I have to find out.
So what did your recovery start looking like after all of that? Did you start doing did you start going to programs?
Yeah.
What worked for you?
Yeah. So I ran into an old friend of mine. They used to take us to outside meetings at this treatment center, and I ran into an old friend of mine I used with, actually. It was towards the beginning of my addiction as it was starting to spiral. He had robbed me. And he's an ex Kent State football player, lineman. He was a big dude. And I remember seeing him at this meeting and being like, oh my. And I didn't really know what to do. And he goes up to me and he goes like, "Daniel." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "We've been waiting for you." And I was like, "Who else has been waiting for me? Who's here?" Like, but he was like, "Nah, man." He's like, "Will you walk with me?" And I'm thinking like, last time I saw this dude, he robbed me. Like,
yeah, but did he get jumped or what?
Right. So we start walking and he goes like, "Hey, Daniel, I work a program of AA." That's what it was. And even though his thing was dope, and he was like, "I'm on my 9th step and making amends. And I don't know if you know this or not, but I robbed you." I'm like, "Oh, you don't say." And and he goes, "Yeah, and I want to know what I can do to make it right." And I was like, "What?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, that just was like, yeah. What do you mean? So I'm trying to add up the amount of money that he stole in like whatever it was, goods and things. And, the first only thing that came out of my mouth was like, "Can you help me? Like, can you help me?" And he was like, "Absolutely." He's like, "You got a sponsor?" I was like, "No." He goes, "Okay. I mean, if you want, I could temporarily sponsor you." And I go, "Oh, great." He said, No. It don't work that way, man. You got to ask me." And I was like, "Ask you?" Like that was the hardest thing I ever did in my life, man. Like I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And I asked him, and he walked me through the first, 10 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous before he relapsed himself, and
Yeah.
usually I don't plug the program, but to me anymore, I don't really care. But
Yeah.
that was the program that I felt like I belonged in, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, um,
Yeah.
never really was a much of a drinker, maybe as a kid,
Yeah.
but what they were doing and the love that I received and the support and the structure and just the fact that the one guy that I found the trust did it, it was like,
Hmm.
that's what I did. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, like we talked before, like everybody's program's different. I tried AA and personally AA wasn't my cup of tea, but I don't knock it, I
mhm.
respect it and but yeah, I mean, it's some people they feel like you like that was right up their alley and other people, no.
Yeah,
But um at the end of the day, it's all about what works for you personally.
right. Yep.
So at what point did you start realizing that you wanted to like be an advocate and help change people's lives and all that good stuff?
One of it was at about 6 months. So the treatment program that I attended it was a 6 month program, but it was like the towards the last 5 months of it were one time a week. But I was in sober living. I was surrounded by recovery, and I graduated that and became a peer mentor at the treatment center I went to. So I found a lot of joy in helping people, and I noticed that people gravitated towards me. And the fact that even though it had been a long, years at that point since I had fought, and I was still coming to terms with the fact that I would never fight again, still dealing with all of that, people were intrigued by it, and it opened up conversations, and I really enjoyed it. Um, and I started bouncing at a bar. I was bouncing at a bar. I didn't really have many life skills at this point. I was I was 36 years old. It just like, what am I going to do with my life? But I knew that my life was going to do, like something was going to happen. I just had this feeling like there's no way I survived all of that if just to bounce at a bar, like, at about a year and a half sober, I got a phone call from a college professor at UC Medical Center, which is our biggest hospital in Cincinnati. And I had some really bad experiences with stigma there and stuff. And I wasn't too fond of that hospital, but
Mhm.
she told me that they were starting a volunteer program for people in recovery to come in and talk to patients bedside. At the time, 5, 6 years ago, that was still a newer concept. And so I got an opportunity to volunteer. And I knew the first time I spoke to a patient that didn't know I was coming, that was resisting treatment, that was not, wanting to leave AMA, was dope, all the things, but I was able to walk into this room and connect with that individual. And I knew, like, wow, this is magic. There's something special here.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of around the time, like, I decided, and then, that they wanted to do a news story on an athlete that became addicted to heroin or something. And they found me. And so it was like all these things were aligning. So it was more of like a responsibility than something I ever really thought was going to do much. Like, you know,
Okay, at what point? All right, and so I haven't read
sorry.
too much more. Like you said, you had a book, right? You're an author.
I'm writing a book. I co-authored a medical research abstract.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where the published author part comes from, because it was published.
Okay.
Um, so the book is hopefully going to get published here soon. I actually wrote another paper that I'm getting reviewed as well. Um, so I worked really well in the medical field. Uh, I got an opportunity to help co-author this medical research abstract and present it. And like, I'm a guy. I have a 10th grade education. Like, I got a GED, but I didn't. But it's wild. Like, the writing was something that I never in my life knew I'd enjoy or
Mhm.
ever knew I was good at until I got sober, until I found recovery years into it.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so that it was a medical research abstract on how on peer volunteers in emergency departments, basically, and like to prove that it works. Like put people like us into these hospitals, put us in there, give us access, and let us talk with our people, and let us reach them, and let us make the moves, right? Like
in emergency rooms and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so like when they come in for, if they need treatment or something, and instead of like the doctors going in and, shaming them or something, it's more of like what, having peer recovery people in there?
Just kind of being like, almost, it was different roles. So, the doctor would come in, like, they saw the doctor, and it's wow, man, when they put people like us in those environments, things change. They begin to see, because you gotta, one of the, and I'll jump to this real quick, like with the stigma, right? A lot of times the way we want to fight stigma is to literally physically like fight it. Bump heads with somebody. Let's debate. I'm right, you're wrong. Harm reduction, not harm reduction. Like all these little debates that people want to do instead of making it a conversation. And the way you make it a conversation is make it so somebody feels comfortable sharing their side with you. And then if you want them to understand yours, you have to next understand them. Do I think that somebody has a right to be like, all addicts die, Narcan doesn't matter? But maybe that's been their experience, that everybody they've tried to help has passed away or hurt them. So I have to understand that if I'm going to change their perception of it. And that's what I did. So like the thing you mentioned about, like, I literally watched medical professionals change their perception of what addiction is because of what they saw me doing, because of the way I carried myself, the way I spoke, the way I was educated, the shots that I took, the way they became, I became part of that environment. Like I wasn't just a peer supporter, I was a medical professional. So I would advocate for them, or like if they needed medication, or just make them feel comfortable.
Yeah, we I don't know if you've seen, but we had Dr. Taylor Nichols on the show, and he's really big on TikTok. He's a ER/addiction medicine specialist in San Francisco, and he's got a really, really good following on TikTok. And he was a doctor who initially was like against addicts, and like had his view was just like most medical professions, and he said that like he started learning about it and whatnot, and it completely changed like his view and his opinion on it. And so now like that's one thing that he does now, is he like he helps other doctors and medical facilities change, learning the verbiage and changing their point of views and stuff, so that way he can treat people that are addicts differently than instead of like the more, oh, you're just a junkie drug seeking, and they just kick you out of there or whatever. So he's been able to successfully change other doctors' opinions on addicts and the way they should be treated in the hospital and all this other stuff. So I mean that's a cool thing though, because we need more doctors that are like that. 100%. Like I get some addicts. Yeah, I mean, I was one of them. The doctor shopped and did this and did that, and puts a bad name. And so I know when they get people that come in, they're like, "Oh yeah, you're drug seeking," but like instead of being like, "You're drug seeking, get the hell out of here," like offer support. Like okay, do like what you're saying. Okay, cool. Now call Daniel in, and he's gonna come in and give me some resources now on what can help me. I got a problem. Obviously, I'm here. So I think that was really cool.
Yeah, and that's one of the aspects too. Is my job title was, I was a research coordinator. So I learned about research because getting research grants that had maybe a substance use aspect to them was able to fund the work that I was doing. So I didn't have to worry about insurance billing. I didn't have to worry about any of that. And I would link, and part of that was linking people to treatment. So the first year, volunteering 4 hours a week, I linked 58 people to treatment. Over the course of 3 more years, about almost 3 years, it was over 1,000. About 1,200 people were linked to treatment from the hospital that normally would have probably never have been linked. Yeah. But I changed my approach. Like most of the people that I approached, they weren't asked if they wanted to talk to me or not. Like that's the problem that a lot of these systems have now, is oh, let's ask somebody who's sick and not making good decisions if they want to make a good decision. Like, like if we're approaching this as a disease and a sickness, then, we need to bend the rules a little. Like, so instead of asking them if they wanted to speak with me, I went in. They had to opt out to me,
Right.
Right. And in that way, I could kind of like break down that barrier, and it worked. It worked really well.
What does life look like for you today? What do you do now in your not only in your personal recovery, but to help others? Like kind of what's a day in the life of Daniel?
Well, okay. So now I have a little over 7 years. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but my recovery date's November 1st of 2016. So, my life today, man, I mean, I've had some really rough times in recovery. I lost my mother and my grandmother back to back, and I was engaged to my daughter's mother, and that some things happened there. Like I've had some really tragic things happen, but it actually helped my recovery a lot more than I thought it would, because it really showed me aspects of this that I didn't know existed, like the true love that we have for our community and people coming through. And it's one of the things that motivate me to do things like what I did today. So, I mean, like I'll give you what my day looked like today. I got up, I went to the gym, because the gym is part of my recovery process. It helps me get centered every day. And then I, went to a homeless outreach event, where we pack bags. One week we pack bags, the next week we pass them out to the homeless. Like we go on the streets that I used to be on and try to help people. And then I got a phone call from a mother who was in crisis regarding her son within an hour I was at that house. Met with the family real quick. Basically just confronted him, and not so like a direct way, but we woke him up and he was a little panicky and kind of freaking out. But me and this guy sat in the garage for an hour and had a wonderful conversation. And at the end, he's like, "I'm really glad I talked to you," because at first he was like, "Get the F out of my house." Like, who the hell are you? And you're a stranger, like, and then that's the type of things like I'm blessed to be able to do almost on a daily basis. I work for a treatment center. I also have a consulting company called Inspiring Recovery. So I just my whole day is based off recovery.
Right.
I do meetings still, but not like I used to. I do really diverse I go to NA, I go to AA, I go to Celebrate Recovery.
CR was big in my recovery.
What is
CR, Celebrate Recovery, was huge in the beginning of my recovery.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I've opened up my eyes a lot, because I mean, here in Cincinnati, as a lot of other parts of the country, but I've lost a lot of people. Like it's like passing conversation, like so and so died. Like, oh, I was just with them yesterday. Like, and that's and it's I truly love my recovery community, man. And every day I just try to get up and help as many people as I can. Whether they come to where I'm working or whatever it is, man, it doesn't matter to me. Like if I could plant a seed of hope, like that woman did for me that day, it's been a good day.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. And I have my daughter, most of the time. So it's another blessing. I can be a father today.
Right.
Which is something I never imagined I'd ever have. I bet
you even now, like I bet you being back when you were 14, 15, 16 years old, catching felonies, that you never thought that your life would be where it is today.
No.
And that's the amazing thing about recovery, is that like we sit back and we look and we're just like, holy crap, like never in a million years would I expect to be where I'm at.
Right.
And recovery brings, we've talked about it earlier, man, recovery brings some amazing things in life. Amazing things, I went through a divorce, and I love my kids and all that, but I met my girlfriend through recovery, and we're like, I mean, I love the hell out of that woman, and we're like, we're a power team when it comes to the podcast and this, that, and it's just like, and I found it all because of recovery.
Right.
So and that's all we're trying to do here is to show others that you can do it, I can do it, they can do it, and that there's hope. There's hope and there's a light. They don't gotta constantly be stuck in that darkness.
Right. Right. And then I also like to always add, like, if someone's watching this and their family member struggling or them themselves, most importantly, is like, you don't have to be like, they're always like, you got to be ready. Like you do have to be ready, but that doesn't always look the same either. Like you're being ready is just maybe being ready to walk through the doors. Maybe you're not sure you want to stop, and that's okay. Like you don't have to be all in to get this. I was not all in when I walked in that treatment center 7 years ago. I became there the more that I saw others recover and I saw my life change, even in the slightest bit. And that's just what you got to give yourself a chance to see. And that's what I try to encourage people to do.
Yeah, you don't got to have it all together to get clean.
Yeah.
Like, just come as you are, you know?
Yeah.
Like you really just if you're ready, just jump, you know? You don't got to get your affairs in order and do this and do that. It's like, just let it happen.
Yeah. And like, man, I couldn't imagine life without using anymore. But
right. Yeah, well, it's really cool to be able to deal with life and unfortunately like the shitty parts of life, but we're dealing with it sober, not having to like be on a substance to just deal with life. And it makes you have a appreciation that like, yeah, I can have a shitty day sober. Instead of, you know, so like it's just cool. Like, yeah, nobody wants to have a crappy day or have crappy times in their life, but I'm able to the fact that we're able to navigate that trauma or whatever sober, like that's a whole nother level right there.
Right. And in the magic, one of the craziest things I never saw happen was like I never wanted to share about any of it. I really wanted to put addiction all behind me. I didn't want to like, that was never my goal, was to be an advocate at first. But I noticed that sharing my trauma and some of the worst things that I had gone through with others helped me heal from them. It was like, you know, talking to a room full of strangers and telling them how I was beat as a kid, like, you know, and then you hear someone else say like, wow, I was, you know, and you see that glimmer of hope or whatever it is. But it's like, I felt more, empowered by that, by the openness.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, man, is keep doing what you're doing. You're doing something right. And I definitely appreciate you coming on, you know, the last hour and just having an authentic conversation and just, you know, hopefully somebody, you know, will hear these words that we're speaking. And, you know, I'm sure I speak for you as well, but like if anybody, our inboxes are always open. Always reach out if you're struggling, if you're a parent of somebody struggling. So you don't have to do it alone.
Absolutely.
Where's let everybody know where they can follow you, where they can find you, support you at.
Yeah, so I have a page on social media called or on Facebook. It's called Inspiring Recovery with Daniel Ritchie. You can type in the @ Dan the Weapon, or you can also type in @Dan Weapon, and they will both go to two pages of mine. I turned my personal page into like a business page as well, because I was turning down a lot of friend requests and things. And you can also find me on TikTok at Daniel Ritchie 1.
Yeah. You got Instagram or YouTube or anything?
Huh?
Yeah. You got Instagram, YouTube or anything?
Yeah. Oh, I do have YouTube. I don't remember the link for that. Honestly, that's going to have to probably get redone. But Instagram is, man, I was prepared for this.
You're good. We're going to put all the links in the description anyway. So
yeah. And I think, it's the Instagram one's the one that always ties me up. It's, yes, it's at Dan Weapon 513.
Okay.
So the weapon part, just to clarify, my nickname was the Weapon when I used to fight. So it kind of just stuck.
There you go. So it was called it was the Weapon.
Yep. Daniel the Weapon Ritchie. Mm-hmm.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was that leg kicks with one arm, man. Like,
dude, that right there was cool. It's cool as hell, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll like I said, we'll put all the links in the descriptions and whatnot. And you got a website for your consulting business or anything, or you want to
No,
plug that at
nope.
all?
It's just been
Okay.
all through social media for right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, go find Daniel. Go follow him. Go show him some love. Go support him. He's got a lot of great things that are going on. And anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think you hit it on the head. I just think that if anyone's struggling or a family member's struggling, our inboxes are open. This isn't something you got to go through alone, whether you're the loved one or the person suffering. There's somebody out there that can help you. And there's people out there that you're helping by letting them help you. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's you're never too far gone. If you still are breathing, literally, you can come back from this.
Yeah.
There may be
And
consequences, but you can come back. Don't give up.
well, and that's what I always tell people too. Like, you're never too broken to be put back together.
Mm-mm.
Never. And so, 100%. So, all right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. That wraps up another episode of the Blacklist Podcast. Till next time, signing off.